Have you ever caught yourself trying to control absolutely everything in your life? Relationships, career, what people think about you. And yet it seems that the more you try, the more things slip out of your control. What if I told you that, according to one of the greatest psychologists of all time, Carl Jung, the secret to everything working out is precisely to stop trying to control? Sounds contradictory, doesn't it? But in the next few minutes, I'm going to show you why this might be the key that will completely transform your life. You know that feeling of carrying the world on your shoulders? Of needing to be perfect all the time? Of living anxiously trying to predict and control every detail of the future? Well, you're not alone in this. And the most interesting thing is that this obsessive search for control might be exactly what's preventing you from achieving what you desire most. In this video, we're going to dive deep into Jung's psychology to understand why the more we try to control, the more we lose control, how detachment can be your greatest ally, and the secret to finding a lighter and more authentic path. If you're already tired of fighting against the current, trying to be who you're not, or simply want to discover a more natural way of living, this video is for you. So get ready for a transformative journey. Hit the bell, leave your like, and let's discover together why sometimes stopping caring so much is exactly what we need for everything to start working out. And believe me, what you'll discover in the next few minutes could completely change your perspective on success, happiness, and personal fulfillment. Are you ready for this journey? In Carl Jung's analytical psychology, the ego plays a fundamental role in our conscious experience. It's the part of us that we believe to be ourselves, our conscious identity that interacts with the external world. However, Jung warns us about a subtle trap, the illusion of control that the ego tries to maintain over our life. Imagine the ego as a stubborn captain trying to navigate a ship through turbulent waters. He firmly believes he can control every wave, every gust of wind, every deviation from the route. This metaphor perfectly illustrates how many of us live, in a constant battle to control all aspects of our lives. We desperately seek to control our relationships, trying to shape the people around us to meet our expectations. We strive to control our careers, making rigid plans and becoming frustrated when life doesn't follow the script we've written. And perhaps most exhausting of all, we try to control how others see us, carefully constructing an image that we believe to be acceptable or admirable. But Jung invites us to question, what is the cost of this incessant pursuit of control? As we grip more tightly to this illusion, paradoxically, we move further away from our true self. It's as if we're so busy manipulating the controls of a video game that we forget to live the real life unfolding around us. The true self, in the Jungian view, is much vaster and deeper than the ego. It encompasses not only our consciousness, but also the vast ocean of the unconscious. When we become too attached to ego control, we silence this deeper wisdom that resides within us. So what happens when we finally let go of the reins, when we stop obsessively caring about external approval and controlling every detail? That's when something magical begins to happen. The ego quiets down. Imagine the silence that follows after a storm. It's in this quietude that we can finally hear the whisper of our inner voice. This voice doesn't come from the anxious, controlling ego, but from the depths of our being. It guides us toward more intuitive choices, more aligned with who we really are. Jung argued that this inner voice, when heard and followed, leads us to a more authentic and fulfilled life. It's not a life free from challenges or difficulties, but one where we face these obstacles in a more integrated and genuine way. Therefore, the first step for everything to start working out is paradoxically to stop trying to make everything work out. It's abandoning the illusion of total control and opening up to the wisdom that emerges when the ego finally quiets down. In this path, we discover that true strength isn't in obsessive control, but in the courage to let go and trust in something greater than our small ego, our authentic self, and the natural flow of life. One of the most intriguing and powerful concepts in Carl Jung's psychology is that of the shadow. This is not an evil entity or something to be feared, but an integral and natural part of our psyche. The shadow, as Jung conceptualized it, represents all aspects of ourselves that we repress, deny, or hide from the world, and often from ourselves. Imagine the shadow as a locked trunk in the basement of our mind. In it, we carefully store all the characteristics, desires, and impulses that we judge unacceptable. These might be personality traits we consider negative, such as anger, jealousy, or selfishness. Or they might be desires and ambitions that we don't allow ourselves to openly acknowledge, fearing social or family judgment. Why do we do this? Jung argued that this repression is a response to the fear of judgment, both external and internal. From childhood, we learn which behaviors are acceptable and which are not. Gradually, we push into the shadow everything that doesn't fit the image we want to project to the world and to ourselves. However, Jung warns us, this repression has a cost. The more we deny parts of ourselves, the more psychic energy we spend keeping these characteristics hidden. It's like trying to keep a ball submerged underwater. It requires constant and exhausting effort. So what happens when we stop fighting against these characteristics and begin to integrate them? This is the process Jung called shadow integration. And this is where the true magic of acceptance begins to happen. By accepting our imperfections and unacceptable desires, we release an enormous amount of psychic energy. We no longer need to spend strength maintaining a perfect facade. We can finally be authentic. Consider, for example, someone who has always repressed their anger, considering it unacceptable. By recognizing and accepting this aspect of themselves, this person doesn't necessarily become angrier. On the contrary, they gain the ability to deal with anger in a healthier and more constructive way. The energy previously spent on repression can now be channeled into expression and growth. Jung beautifully summarized this process with the phrase, "Become who you are." This is not an exhortation to give in to all impulses, but an invitation to embrace the totality of who we are, light and shadow, virtues and flaws. As we integrate our shadow, we discover that life flows with fewer internal conflicts. We are no longer in constant war with parts of ourselves. This inner peace is reflected in our external interactions, allowing for more authentic and deeper relationships. Moreover, shadow integration makes us more compassionate, not just with ourselves, but with others. Recognizing and accepting our own imperfections, we become more understanding of others' flaws. It's important to note that this process is not an easy or quick journey. Confronting and accepting aspects of ourselves that we have long denied can be challenging and even painful. However, as Jung emphasized, it is a necessary path to individuation, the process of becoming a complete and integrated individual. When we stop caring about maintaining a perfect image and accept our totality, including our shadow, we make space for a more authentic and fulfilled life. It is in this state of acceptance and integration that paradoxically everything begins to work out, not because external circumstances necessarily change, but because our relationship with ourselves and with the world is profoundly transformed. Carl Jung introduced the concept of synchronicity in a world dominated by linear causal thinking. This revolutionary principle challenged the notion that all events are linked by a simple cause and effect relationship. Instead, Jung proposed that there is an additional dimension in the tapestry of reality, one where seemingly unrelated events connect through meaning, not causality. Imagine two friends who haven't spoken for years thinking of each other at the same moment and deciding to call simultaneously. Or consider that time when you were thinking about an obscure subject and suddenly found references to it in several different places. These are examples of what Jung would call synchronicity, meaningful coincidences that seem to defy probabilities and suggest a deeper underlying order in the universe. But what does this have to do with stopping caring? The connection is deeper than it might seem at first glance. When we're constantly trying to control every aspect of our lives, we operate in a perpetual doing mode. We're so focused on forcing specific outcomes that we often lose sight of the bigger picture. It's like trying to drive a car while only looking at the steering wheel, without paying attention to the road ahead or the landscape around. However, when we begin to let go of this obsessive control, when we stop caring so much about specific outcomes and rigid deadlines, something remarkable happens. We start noticing more. Our senses open up to a wider range of experiences and possibilities. It's in this more receptive and attentive state that synchronicities begin to manifest more clearly in our lives. Jung argued that these synchronicities are not mere random coincidences, but signs of an interconnected and meaningful universe. They can serve as indicators, subtle guidance from the cosmos, guiding us toward our most authentic path. Consider the metaphor of a river. When we fight against the current, we spend an enormous amount of energy and make little progress. But when we align ourselves with the flow, we find that we can navigate with much more ease and grace. Similarly, when we stop forcing outcomes and open ourselves to the natural flow of life, we often discover that things unfold in surprisingly harmonious ways. It's important to emphasize that trusting in the flow of life and being open to synchronicities is not an attitude of passivity or surrender. Jung was not advocating that we become mere passive observers of our own lives. On the contrary, he suggested a more subtle and powerful form of engagement with the world. Trusting the flow means being attentive, responsive, and aligned with our deepest purpose. It's like a surfer who doesn't try to control the ocean but learns to read the waves and moves in harmony with them. The surfer is still active and engaged, but his action comes from a place of alignment, not struggle. When we open ourselves to synchronicities and trust in the flow of life, we often discover that the universe seems to conspire in our favor. Opportunities arise at the right time, important people enter our lives when we need them most, and solutions to seemingly intractable problems manifest in unexpected ways. Jung believed this happens not because of some external mystical force, but because we're finally aligned with our deeper, more authentic self. When we stop fighting against who we truly are and what the universe is offering us, we become more receptive to the subtle guidances and opportunities that were always present, but that we were too noisy to perceive before. In essence, the concept of synchronicity invites us to a more fluid and intuitive way of navigating through life. It encourages us to let go of rigid control, trust more in our intuition, and remain open to the unexpected possibilities the universe might offer. By adopting this perspective, many discover that everything begins to work out, not because they're controlling every detail, but because they're finally dancing in synchrony with life's deeper rhythm. It's a paradigm shift that can transform not just how we see the world, but how we experience each moment of our journey. For those who want to delve even deeper into this inner exploration, consider acquiring my ebook, Revealing the Shadow, Carl Jung's Guidance for Facing Internal Conflict. This guide offers not only understanding but also practical strategies to embrace all parts of yourself. By acquiring this guide, you will take a courageous step toward one of the deepest and most revolutionary aspects of human psychology: the encounter with your own shadow. The ebook link is pinned in the first comment. And remember, this journey is just the beginning. Continue exploring your shadows to discover the light they can reveal. At the heart of Carl Jung's analytical psychology is the concept of the self. Unlike the ego, which represents our conscious identity, the self is a much broader and deeper notion. Jung conceived the self as the totality of the psyche, encompassing not just the conscious, but also the vast realm of the unconscious. Imagine the self as a large circle where the ego is just a small point on the surface. The self encompasses all our experiences, memories, archetypes, unrealized potentials, and even aspects of ourselves that we don't yet consciously know. It is the organizing center of the entire personality, the source of our deepest individuality. When we live predominantly from the ego, we tend to worry excessively about fragments of our existence: professional success, social image, accumulation of power or wealth. These concerns, although they might seem important on the surface, are often distractions that take us away from a deeper connection with our true self. Jung argued that the true goal of psychological development, what he called the individuation process, is the realization of the self. This doesn't mean abandoning the ego, but rather integrating it harmoniously with the other parts of the psyche, allowing the self to emerge as the directing center of our life. But how do we make this transition from an ego-centered life to one aligned with the self? Paradoxically, this begins when we stop caring about the fragments and seek completeness. When we set aside the obsession with external success, social status, or the approval of others, we create space for deeper aspects of ourselves to emerge. It's like clearing the surface of a turbulent lake. As the waves calm down, we can see more clearly the depths below. Quieting the mind, whether through meditation, contemplation, or simply cultivating moments of silence in our daily life, allows the self to express itself more freely. In this state of quietude, we can hear the inner voice that is often drowned out by the constant noise of our ego concerns. It's in this state of alignment with the self that Jung suggested everything begins to work out. But it's crucial to understand what this really means. It's not that magically all problems disappear or that we always get what we want. Instead, we find a profound sense of being on the right path, of living in harmony with our truest nature. When we act from the self, our decisions tend to be more integrated and holistic. We're not just reacting to the immediate demands of the ego or external pressures, but responding to a deeper calling that takes into account the totality of who we are. This can manifest in various ways in our life. 1. More authentic relationships. When we're aligned with ourself, we tend to attract and cultivate relationships that reflect and support our true nature. 2. Meaningful work. We may discover that our work becomes more than just a means of earning money, transforming into an expression of our deepest gifts and values. 3. Increased creativity. The self is an inexhaustible source of creativity. When we connect to it, we often experience bursts of inspiration and creative expression. 4. Emotional resilience. Anchored in the self, we find an inner stability that helps us navigate life's ups and downs with more balance. 5. Sense of purpose. Aligned with the self, we experience a clearer sense of direction and meaning in our life. Jung believed that this state of alignment with the self is not a final destination, but an ongoing process. It's a dance between the conscious and the unconscious, between the known and the unknown within us. Everything begins to work out, not because external circumstances always align perfectly, but because we're finally at peace with who we are in our totality. It's a state of internal harmony that reflects in how we experience and interact with the external world. By seeking the completeness of the self, instead of getting lost in the fragments, we discover a way of living that is both more authentic and more satisfying. It's an invitation to a journey of continuous self-discovery, where each challenge and each joy becomes part of a larger process of realizing our deepest potential. So has this journey through Jungian psychology moved you? If this content touched your heart or opened your mind to new perspectives, you can help others find this same path. Hit that like button. It helps the algorithm a lot to take this message to more people who, just like you, are seeking a more authentic path. If you're not yet subscribed to the channel, this is the moment. Also activate the bell, because every week we bring deep content about psychology, self-knowledge, and personal development here on TheCrowMind. Share this video with that friend who you know needs to hear this message. Sometimes a simple video can be the key to a great transformation. That's it for today, so I say goodbye to you. Remember, between the shadows and the light resides your true strength. Until next time.